The shuttle descended through the pale clouds of Caro's prime, its engines humming softly. From above, the planet looked calm and empty, but everyone on board knew the truth. Caro's prime was a neutral world only in name. It was a meeting ground for some of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Apex predators ruled its lands, creatures that had never bowed to any empire. Princess Saraline stood near the viewport, her posture straight and dignified. She was young by her species' standards, but already known across the coalition for her sharp mind. Her skin shimmered faintly with silver-blue patterns, a mark of royal lineage. Today's mission was important. If the negotiations failed, war would spread across several systems. Behind her stood the security team. Massive warriors from different species checked weapons and armor. Thick claws tapped against metal floors. Low growls filled the cabin. These were elite guards, chosen for strength and reputation. At the far end of the group stood a human. He was smaller than most of them. No claws, no fangs, no thick armor plates. His uniform was plain, marked with the symbol of the Terran Union. A simple rank badge rested on his chest. Apprentice. That was all it said. His name was Elias Ward. He stood quietly, hands behind his back, eyes relaxed but alert. He listened more than he spoke. To most, he looked out of place, like a student who had wandered into a room of legends. Princess Saraline noticed him only because he was blocking her path when she turned. "Move," she said calmly. "Yes, Your Highness," Elias replied and stepped aside immediately. She gave him no further thought. The shuttle landed on a wide stone platform carved directly into the ground. Tall structures surrounded the area, ancient and rough, built by predator species long before the coalition existed. The air felt heavy, filled with unfamiliar scents and low vibrations. As the doors opened, the guards stepped out first, spreading into formation. Their movements were sharp and aggressive, meant to show strength. Elias exited last. The moment his boots touched the stone, something shifted. It was subtle, almost invisible. A massive reptilian guard nearby paused mid-step. Its slit eyes narrowed, focusing briefly on the human. A feline warrior's tail stopped swaying. A hulking insectoid clicked its mandibles once, then went still. No one said anything. Princess Saraline walked forward, her attendants following. She felt a strange pressure in the air, like the calm before a storm. The predators stationed around the platform watched the delegation closely. These were not coalition guards. These were natives of Caro's prime, apex predators. They were taller than any species Saraline had seen. Thick muscle, hardened scales, bone crests, eyes that showed no fear. These beings had wiped out rivals on their own worlds and survived without allies. Usually, they stared with hunger or challenge. Today, many of them stared at the human apprentice. Saraline frowned slightly but said nothing. The delegation moved into the grand hall, a massive open chamber carved from black stone. The ceiling stretched high above, supported by pillars marked with scars from ancient battles. The center held a long circular platform where talks would begin. As the coalition representatives took their places, the apex predators entered from the opposite side. Their leader stepped forward, Vorthak. His species had no known word for mercy. He was a towering figure covered in dark armor-like skin with eyes like burning embers. His presence alone had caused ambassadors to faint in past meetings. Vorthak's gaze swept across the room. He ignored the armored guards. He paused on Elias, just for a heartbeat. Then he moved on, but he did not bare his teeth. Princess Saraline noticed that. The talks began slowly. Formal words were exchanged. Promises of shared trade routes, neutral borders, and mutual survival filled the air. Every sentence was carefully chosen. Still, tension pressed down on everyone. One wrong word could trigger bloodshed. As the hours passed, minor disputes rose and fell. At one point, a predator delegate slammed a claw into the stone floor, cracking it. Several coalition guards tightened their grips on weapons. Elias did not move. He watched, he listened. When another predator leaned forward aggressively towards Saraline, one of her guards stepped between them, growling in warning. Vorthak lifted a claw. The hall went silent. The predator leaned back. Again, no challenge followed. Saraline's unease grew. During a short recess, she turned to one of her advisors. "Why are they holding back?" The advisor shook his head. "Unknown, Your Highness. They should be testing us already." Her gaze drifted, almost against her will, toward the human apprentice standing near the wall. He was calm, not relaxed. Calm. There was a difference. She dismissed the thought and returned to the talks. Later, an incident occurred. A junior coalition diplomat misspoke, accidentally implying that the predators needed coalition protection. The words echoed in the chamber like an insult carved into stone. Several apex predators rose to their feet. Weapons were not drawn because they did not need them. Their bodies were weapons. Guards shifted, ready to die for the princess if needed. Elias stepped forward. It was a small movement, barely noticeable. He did not raise his voice. "Apologies," he said simply. The meaning was mistranslated. Everyone froze. A human apprentice had spoken without permission. Saraline turned sharply. "You were not." Vorthak raised his claw again. He looked directly at Elias. "Speak," the predator leader said. The word carried weight like a command carved into instinct. Elias inclined his head respectfully. "Conflict would benefit no one here. We are guests on your world. Guests should show respect." Silence followed. Then something impossible happened. Vorthak sat back down, slowly. Around the hall, other apex predators followed his lead. Princess Saraline felt a chill run through her veins. The rest of the session ended without violence. Agreements were postponed, but no threats were made. When the delegation was escorted back to their quarters, the guards whispered among themselves. "What is that human?" one asked. "Why do they listen to him?" another murmured. Saraline summoned Elias later that cycle. He arrived promptly, standing straight, hands clasped behind his back. "You spoke out of turn today," she said, her tone controlled. "Yes, Your Highness." "Why?" "Because silence would have led to bloodshed." She studied him closely now. Up close he looked ordinary, brown eyes, tired lines near them, no visible enhancements. "You are listed as an apprentice," she said. "An observer." "Yes." "To whom?" "The Terran Union." "That is not an answer." Elias met her gaze, not with defiance but honesty. "I am learning, Your Highness. Always." Saraline leaned back slightly. "The apex predators reacted to you. They do not react that way to anyone." Elias paused before answering. "Predators understand danger, not strength, not size, danger. And you are dangerous. I am human." The words were simple. They unsettled her more than any threat. She dismissed him soon after, but sleep did not come easily that night. Outside the compound, apex predators patrolled the stone corridors. When Elias passed by later, heading to his assigned quarters, several of them stepped aside without realizing they had done so. None challenged him. None followed him. Somewhere deep in their instincts, older than language, something whispered a warning. This was not prey, and not a rival. This was something that survived when everything else failed. Morning light crept into the coalition compound through narrow stone openings. The light was dull and red, filtered by Caros Prime's thick atmosphere. Princess Saraline had not slept well. Her mind replayed the events of the previous day again and again. The silence of the apex predators, the way they had stepped back. And always at the center of it all, the quiet human apprentice. She stood near a low table, reviewing reports from her advisors. Every document said the same thing in different words: uncertainty. The predators' behavior did not match any known pattern. "They should have tested us by now," one advisor said nervously. "This restraint is unnatural." Saraline nodded slowly. "Nothing about this world is natural." Outside, the compound gates opened for the daily patrol exchange. Coalition guards rotated shifts with local sentinels. The process was usually tense. Today it was silent. Elia's ward walked through the courtyard, heading toward the analysis wing. He carried a small data slate, moving at an unhurried pace. Around him, the massive forms of apex predators stood watch. As he passed, one of the sentinels shifted its weight. Then it stepped back. The movement was small but deliberate. Another predator noticed and did the same. Within moments, a clear path formed through beings that had never made way for anyone. Elias did not look up. From an upper balcony, Princess Saraline saw everything. Her breath caught. This was no coincidence. She turned sharply. Summon him again, immediately. Elias arrived soon after. The room was quieter this time. No advisors, no guards, only the princess and the human apprentice. "You walk among them freely," Saraline said. "They move for you." "Yes, your highness. That is not normal." "No," Elias agreed. She folded her hands. "Explain." Elias took a moment, not hesitation, consideration. "Apex predators evolved to dominate," he said. "But domination is expensive. It costs energy, risk, life." Saraline listened closely. "Humans evolved differently," Elias continued. "We were never the strongest or the fastest or the most dangerous in a direct fight. Yet you conquered your world," she said. "We survived it," he corrected gently. "There is a difference." Before she could respond, an alarm sounded. Low, deep, ancient. The compound walls vibrated as distant roars echoed through the stone corridors. An attack. Advisors rushed in, panic clear on their faces. "Your Highness, a rogue predator clan has entered the outer sector. They reject the talks." Saraline stood immediately. "Evacuate noncombatants, activate shields." The advisor hesitated. "The shields will not hold long." Elias stepped forward. "Where are they coming from?" The advisor pointed to a display. "From the lower ravines, they are moving fast." Elias nodded once. "Then they already decided." Saraline looked at him sharply. "Decided what?" "To test us." The ground shook as the first explosion hit the outer wall. Stone shattered. Dust filled the air. Guards moved to defensive positions. Weapons powered up. Fear spread like a living thing. Elias walked toward the exit. "Where are you going?" Saraline demanded. "To meet them." "That is madness," she said. "You are unarmed." Elias stopped and turned. "That is why it might work." Before she could stop him, he was gone. Outside, chaos ruled. Coalition guards fired warning shots into the air. Apex predator sentinels roared back at the attackers. The rogue clan poured from the ravines, massive and violent, their eyes burning with hunger and pride. They wanted blood. Elias stepped into the open ground between both sides. The firing stopped, not because of orders, because instinct screamed. The rogue predators slowed. Their snarls faded. They watched the human approach alone. Elias raised one hand, not in threat, in acknowledgement. "You came to prove dominance," he said loudly, "but dominance fades." The largest rogue predator stepped forward, towering over him. Its breath was hot, filled with the scent of iron. "You are small," it growled. "You are meat." Elias looked up calmly. "On my world, everything tried to eat us too." The predator hesitated. Elias continued. "We learned which fights to avoid, which to endure, and which to end." The predator circled him slowly. "You challenge me." "No," Elias said. "I warn you." A hush fell over the battlefield. "I have seen species like yours before," Elias said. "Perfect hunters, perfect killers. They always win until the world changes." The rogue predator's claws dug into the stone. "We adapt." "So do we," Elias replied. "Faster." The predator stopped moving. It sensed it now. Not strength, not aggression. A history written in extinction events, scars, and stubborn survival. Around them, the other apex predators watched in silence. Finally, the rogue leader stepped back. One step, then another. A signal. The rogue clan retreated into the ravines, their roars fading into the distance. No shots were fired. No blood was spilled. Princess Saraline arrived moments later, disbelief written across her face. She looked from the retreating predators to the human standing alone in the dust. "What are you?" she whispered. Elias turned to her. "An apprentice." She laughed softly, almost in shock. Then what do you call your masters? Elias met her gaze. We call them history. That cycle, the apex predators requested a private audience, not with the Coalition Council, with the human. Saraline insisted on attending. They met in the deepest chamber of the Grand Hall. The predators stood in a wide circle. Elias stood at the center, small and still. Vorthak spoke. Your kind carries death without claws. Elias nodded. And life without mercy. Why do you hide this? Another predator asked. Because fear ends dialogue, Elias said. And we came to talk. Vorthak lowered his head slightly. Then speak for your people. Elias glanced at Saraline. For the first time she saw uncertainty in his eyes. I am still learning, he said, but I will speak. Saraline realized something then, deep and unsettling. The galaxy had measured power wrong for millennia, and humans had let it. As the meeting ended, apex predators stepped aside once more, clearing a path, not for a princess, but for a human apprentice before any coalition map existed. The air was heavy, not with threat this time, but with attention. Every apex predator in the room was focused on the small human standing at the center. Princess Saraline stood at the edge of the circle. Her guards were tense, ready to react, but they did not move unless she moved, and she did not move at all. Elia's ward stood quietly. Vorthak took a slow step forward. His massive form blocked the dim light behind him. You speak of survival, the predator leader said. Yet your kind spreads among the stars. Expansion is not survival, it is dominance. Elias did not argue. Sometimes, he said, survival requires growth. Sometimes it requires restraint. Humans learn the cost of confusing the two. Another predator shifted. Your kind has no natural weapons. Elias nodded. That is true. Then why do our instincts warn us? The predator pressed. Elias was silent for a moment. Then he spoke. Because humans are what remains after the world removes everything else. The words settled heavily. Princess Saraline felt a strange chill. This was not boasting. This was not threat. It was a statement shaped by time. Vorthak circled Elias slowly. Our species ruled our world through strength. So did many, Elias replied. Most of them are gone. The predators murmured among themselves, low and uneasy. What do you want from us? Vorthak asked at last. Peace, Elias said. Not submission, not fear, just space to exist without destroying each other. Vorthak stopped directly in front of him. And if we refuse? Elias looked up, meeting burning eyes without flinching. Then we prepare, quietly, patiently. The meaning was clear. The meeting ended without ceremony. The predators left one by one, none turning their backs on the human. When the chamber was empty, Saraline finally released a breath she had been holding. You speak to them as equals, she said softly. No, Elias answered. As survivors. She studied him closely. You said you were an apprentice. To what exactly? To mistakes, he said. Before she could ask more, alarms sounded again. This time sharper, urgent. An advisor rushed in. Your Highness, long-range sensors have detected movement. Multiple fleets entering the system, not coalition. Saraline's blood ran cold. Identify them. Unknown configuration, the advisor said, but the apex predators recognize them. Vorthak returned, his expression dark. They are the devourers. Elias stiffened slightly. Saraline turned to him. You know them. I know of them, Elias said. They don't negotiate. The devourers were a nomadic species that consumed entire systems. They left nothing behind. Even apex predators avoided them. They will not respect borders, Vorthak said. They will test this world. Saraline's mind raced. Can the coalition defend against them? Vorthak answered before Elias could. No. All eyes turned to the human. Elias closed his eyes briefly as if thinking through old memories. Then we don't fight them directly, Saraline frowned. What do? We endure, Elias said, and make them choose a different target. Hours later, the sky above Caro's prime darkened as massive shapes entered orbit. The devourer ships were organic and vast, moving like living storms. Fear spread through the city. Sirens echoed. Even apex predators showed unease. Elia stood with Saraline on a high platform overlooking the plains. They test worlds the way predators test prey, he said. They probe, they observe reactions. And if they decide we are weak, Saraline asked. They feed, Elias replied simply. The first probe descended. It struck the plains beyond the city, cracking the ground. Smaller devourers poured out, moving fast, consuming everything in their path. Apex predators roared and charged. They were strong. They were brave. They were not enough. Elias watched closely. They are learning, he murmured. What can we do? Saraline demanded. Elias turned to her. Give me access to the planetary broadcast. She hesitated only a second. Granted. Moments later, Elias stood before a live transmission that reached every devourer vessel in orbit. He did not shout, he did not threaten. This world is defended, he said calmly, not by weapons you understand. The devourers did not respond. Elias continued. Humans are here, still nothing. But the devourer probe slowed. Elias spoke again. We are not apex predators. We are not conquerors. We are what remains after worlds burn. A ripple passed through the devourer formation. They remember, Elias whispered. Saraline stared at him. Remember what? Us, he said. The devourers had encountered humanity before, long ago, far from here. They had attacked human colonies. They had won battles. They had lost wars of time. Humanity did not chase them. Humanity did not fight for revenge. Humanity adapted, starved them of easy prey, turned systems into traps of emptiness and endurance. The devourers withdrew then. They withdrew now. One by one, the massive ships turned away from Caro's prime. The probes retreated. The sky slowly cleared. Silence fell across the plains. Apex predators lowered their heads. Princess Saraline felt weak with relief. You defeated them without firing a shot. Elias shook his head. No, we reminded them. Of what? That we are expensive to destroy. Later, as emergency lights dimmed and the world steadied, Saraline found Elias alone, sitting on a stone step looking tired. You saved this world, she said. So did they, Elias replied, gesturing toward the apex predators. They stood their ground. She sat beside him. You never told me your rank was false. It's not, he said. I am still learning. Learning what? She asked. How to help others survive, Elias said quietly. Saraline looked out over Caro's prime. Apex predators and coalition forces now worked side by side, clearing damage, guarding civilians. The galaxy had changed today, not because of power, but because something older had spoken. Something that had survived when power failed. The days after the devourers withdrew were uneasy. Caro's prime was quiet, but it was not peaceful. Silence hung over the stone cities like a held breath. Everyone knew something had changed. Worlds did not survive the devourers often. Those that did were never the same. Princess Saraline walked through the main plaza with a small escort. Apex predators stood guard beside coalition soldiers. Once, this sight would have been unthinkable. Now, it felt necessary. People watched her pass, but their eyes did not linger on her crown. They followed the human walking a few steps behind. Elias Ward looked more tired than before. Dark circles marked his eyes. His movements were slower, careful, as if every step carried weight. Saraline noticed. You should be resting, she said quietly. I will, Elias replied. Later. Later keeps being delayed. He gave a faint smile. That's usually how it goes. They entered a council chamber where representatives from the apex predators waited. Vorthak stood at the center. His posture was rigid, his expression grim. You are leaving, Vorthak said, looking directly at Elias. Yes, Elias answered, soon. A low rumble moved through the chamber. Saraline frowned. Leaving? Why? Elias met her eyes. Because the devourers will talk about this. Vorthak's claws tightened. They fear you. They remember us, Elias corrected. That's worse. The apex predators listened closely. When predators encounter resistance, Elias continued, they test again later, stronger, smarter. You believe they will return, Saraline said. Yes, Elias replied, and not just here. A heavy silence followed. Vorthak stepped forward. Then we prepare, Elias nodded. That's why I came. Plans were made quickly. Defensive positions expanded. Supply routes were reinforced. Apex predators shared knowledge of terrain and ancient war strategies. Humans shared data, simulations, and long-term survival models. Saraline watched it all unfold with growing awe. Humans did not command. They connected. They did not dominate the room. They made it function. Still, tension grew. Some coalition members whispered that humanity was hiding too much. Others feared that Elias himself was a threat. Rumors spread fast. One cycle later, an emergency council was called. Saraline entered to find raised voices and angry faces. A single human should not hold this much influence, a coalition general argued. We don't even know his true authority. He is manipulating predator instincts, another accused. That is dangerous. Saraline felt heat rise in her chest. He saved this world. That does not make him trustworthy, the general snapped. Before Saraline could respond, the chamber doors opened. Elias walked in. The room fell silent. I agree, he said calmly. You shouldn't trust me, gasps echoed. Saraline turned sharply. Elias, he raised a hand gently. Let me finish. He faced the council. You shouldn't trust humans easily. We are not gentle by nature. We learned restraint because the alternative destroyed us. The general leaned forward. Then admit it, you are more than an apprentice. Elias nodded. Yes. The words struck like thunder. Saraline's breath caught. I am an apprentice diplomat, Elias continued. But I was trained by people who ended wars by outlasting them. You are a weapon, someone accused. Elias shook his head. No, weapons are used until they break. We are systems, we endure. The room was quiet. I did not come here to lead, Elias said. I came to observe, to learn if this galaxy can survive what's coming. Saraline felt a chill. What do you mean? Elias looked at her. The Devourers are not the end, they are a symptom. Vorthak growled softly. Of what? Of collapse, Elias said. Too many apex species, too much consumption, not enough endurance. Fear spread through the room. We have seen this pattern before, Elias continued. Galaxies burn not from invasion but imbalance. A long silence followed. Finally, Saraline spoke. What are you asking of us? Elias met her gaze. Trust, not in me, in change. That night an assassination attempt was made. It happened quickly. A sniper shot from the shadows, aimed at Elias as he crossed a narrow bridge between towers. An apex predator moved without thinking. It took the shot. The impact shattered its shoulder. The predator collapsed, roaring in pain. Guards rushed forward. The attacker was caught moments later, a coalition extremist who feared human influence. Elias knelt beside the wounded predator. His hands were steady. You stepped into danger. The predator bared its teeth weakly. You would have done the same. Elias nodded. Yes. Saraline arrived shaken. She looked at the injured predator, then at Elias. This is getting worse. Yes, Elias said, which means we're close to the truth. The attempt changed everything. Apex predators formally declared Elias under their protection, not as a ruler. As a survivor, this declaration shocked the galaxy. Messages flooded in from distant systems. Some praised it, others panicked. Saraline stood before the council again days later. We cannot return to old hierarchies, she said firmly. They failed us. Eyes turned to Elias. You are leaving, she said softly. But you're not abandoning us, are you? Elias shook his head. No, I'm calling others. Others? Vorthak asked. Elias' expression hardened slightly. Humans who are further along in their learning. Saraline swallowed. Masters. Elias paused. We don't use that word. The skies above Karos Prime lit up that cycle as a small fleet arrived. Human ships, simple in design, unimpressive in appearance, but apex predators felt it immediately. The pressure, the warning. Saraline watched as the lead ship transmitted a single message. "We heard you needed help." Elias closed his eyes briefly, relief passing across his face. The galaxy was no longer dealing with an apprentice alone, and that realization frightened everyone. Even the apex predators stepped back. The arrival of the human fleet changed everything. Caro's prime skies, once tense with fear, now pulsed with controlled energy. The ships were smaller than many coalition vessels, unarmed by conventional standards, yet their presence radiated authority. Apex predators, ancient and proud, lowered their heads instinctively. They had never faced humans like this, humans who brought not raw strength, but calculated endurance. Princess Saraline stood on the balcony of the Grand Hall, overlooking the central plaza. The Predators and Coalition forces worked side by side, repairing the city, tending to civilians, and reinforcing defenses. The atmosphere was tense but orderly. Everywhere she looked, she saw humans and apex predators interacting without dominance or fear. She turned her eyes toward Elias Ward, who stood calmly among the newcomers. His posture remained quiet, but there was a strength in it that made even the largest predator pause. Vorthak approached her, his massive frame moving with surprising grace. "You rely too much on him," the predator said in a low voice. "What will you do if he is gone?" Saraline shook her head. "He isn't gone. He is leading them. But he isn't the only reason this world survived. It is how he reminds all of us what survival really means." Vorthak snorted softly. "Survival? We survived for millions of cycles before he arrived." "Yes," she said, "but surviving with fear is not the same as surviving with wisdom." Meanwhile, Elias coordinated with both human and apex predator engineers. He didn't give orders. He suggested, observed, and sometimes stepped aside to let others make mistakes. He explained the importance of timing, patience, and adaptability, and the others learned quickly. They began to understand that this human, small and seemingly fragile, carried lessons that no brute strength could teach. At one point, a young apex predator approached him, hesitating. "Why do you move among us as if you are one of us?" it asked, claws clicking nervously. Elias crouched slightly to meet its gaze. "Because I respect what you are," he said, "and because I know you respect what humans can endure. Strength is temporary. Survival lasts forever." The young predator blinked, unsure if it was understanding or just intimidated, and stepped back. Yet there was a glimmer of trust forming. Days passed, and intelligence reports confirmed that the Devourers had retreated far from Caro's prime. They would test again eventually, but the warning had been clear. Humanity was not prey. Even apex predators, who had once challenged the most lethal species in the galaxy, recognized that humans were something different. Princess Saraline met with Elias privately after one of the council sessions. "You were right," she said softly. "They respected you. They didn't step back because of fear or because you were strong. They stepped back because of what you represent." Elias looked at her, calm but thoughtful. "I represent nothing more than the truth. Humans endure, that is all." She studied him for a long moment. "You say you are an apprentice, but you are more than that, even you know it." He smiled faintly, almost regretfully. "I have learned to understand what is important. That doesn't make me a master, it makes me human." The apex predators formally requested a meeting in the central chamber. Saraline and Elias entered together, the predator delegates following with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Vorthak rose to address the assembly. "You have changed the rules," he said, his voice echoing through the stone walls. "You are not the strongest predator. You do not have claws or fangs like the others, yet we defer to your presence. Explain why." Elias took a slow breath. "We are not the strongest, we are survivors. Strength can be broken, instincts can be outmatched, but survival teaches patience, adaptation, and unity. We endure where others fail. That is why we are respected, not feared." The predators were silent. Some nodded slowly, some lowered their heads, and a few even made subtle gestures of acknowledgement. Princess Caroline felt a sense of awe wash over her. The galaxy had measured power for centuries by muscle, armor, or weaponry, yet here was a species whose influence came from persistence, wisdom, and adaptability. Later, she and Elias stood on a cliff overlooking the plains. The sun set in red and gold streaks, casting long shadows across the recovering city. The air was still, and for the first time in many cycles, Caroline felt peace. "You have changed the galaxy," she said softly. Elias shook his head. "No, the galaxy changed itself. I only reminded it of what it already could be." Caroline looked out across the land. "Do you ever fear what comes next, the devourers or something worse?" Elias smiled faintly. "Fear is irrelevant. Preparation is everything. We survive and the rest follows." A message came through on the planetary comms. Reports from neighboring systems confirmed what the apex predators had long suspected. Humans were not just another species to underestimate. Across several galaxies, word spread of the apprentice who endured. Human diplomats, strategists, and engineers began receiving invitations from alien leaders who had once doubted their kind. The galaxy was starting to see humans as a force that could not be ignored, not because of conquest but because of endurance and adaptability. Caroline turned to Elias. "You said you were learning. Have you finished?" Elias laughed softly. "Learning never ends. But I think humans have taught something to the galaxy today. Even without realizing it, we reminded everyone what survival truly means." The apex predators, once feared for their dominance and feared further for their aggression, began to step aside in more than just literal paths. They deferred to humans in negotiations, in planning, and in crisis response. It was not submission, it was recognition. A recognition that true power was not always displayed in claws or firepower. Sometimes, it was patience, endurance, and the will to survive no matter what. Princess Caroline watched as humans and apex predators coordinated on a project to rebuild parts of Caro's prime. Bridges that had been destroyed during the Devourer test were reconstructed. Systems to monitor the skies were installed. Every act, small or large, carried a silent lesson. Cooperation outweighed raw strength. Elias walked among them quietly, helping where he could. He never sought praise. He did not demand recognition. His calm presence carried authority without requiring fear or submission, and that made every predator, every soldier, and every observer step back, just slightly, in recognition of something they could not name. Finally, as the cycle ended and twilight deepened, Princess Caroline approached him again. "You were right about one thing," she said. "Humans do survive, and not only survive but shape the world around them. I thought you were just an apprentice." Elias looked at her, a quiet smile playing on his lips. "I am still learning, Your Highness, but perhaps the galaxy is learning too." Caroline nodded, feeling the weight of truth in his words. "Then we are both students in a way." Elias glanced toward the horizon, where the apex predators now patrolled in silence, their massive forms relaxed yet alert. "Yes, and perhaps one day all species will understand the real measure of power." The princess felt a strange warmth, a mixture of pride and awe. Humans were fragile in appearance, small and unassuming, yet they carried within them a force older than weapons, deeper than instinct, and stronger than fear. Apex predators, the galaxy's most feared and dominant species, had stepped back not because of threat, but because of recognition. And in that recognition lay the beginning of something new. The galaxy was no longer ruled purely by claws, fangs, or firepower. It had learned another rule. Survival, wisdom, and endurance were forces that even apex predators could not ignore. Princess Caroline smiled quietly. She had witnessed history being rewritten. Not with battles or conquests, but with something far more enduring, the quiet, relentless power of humanity. Elias turned back to her, calm and composed. We will face more challenges, he said. Always, but if the galaxy remembers this lesson, we will endure. Always. Caroline nodded. And the humans? They will survive, Elias said simply. And someday, perhaps, the galaxy will measure power the way it should have from the beginning, not by fear but by who endures. The two of them stood there, watching Karo's prime recover under the first stars of night. The apex predators stepped aside once more, giving space to humans and allies alike. The planet was quiet now, yet alive. And in that quiet, the galaxy felt a subtle shift, a new balance, born not from domination, but from survival, wisdom, and humanity's enduring presence. The lesson was clear. Humans might be underestimated, overlooked, and called apprentices, but when the moment demanded, even the fiercest apex predators would step back. And that was how the galaxy began to learn the truth about humanity.